This is the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and this week I'm joined by James and Paddy as we once again cover all things Celtic. James, Celtic back in action after the international break and picking up where they left off by winning games and keeping clean sheets. What do you think of where Celtic find themselves at the moment?
I mean, you couldn't be in a better place in terms of how the season started. The transfer window ended up well. You know, you just not lost a goal, heading into Europe, and it's the best tie you could get to start off with at home against what on paper is the weakest team, but they've come through a tricky enough qualifying route, so no gimmies.
We'll maybe pick up on it through the show. A few different things to cover, but Miff and Paddy done the post-match after the game against Hearts, and Miff described that Slovan game as a must-win. Now he says taking everything into consideration, but I think he's right. If Celtic have got genuine ambitions of progressing, it is a must-win, isn't it?
100%. You know, if you're going to start off with a loss in that one, then it is an uphill struggle. So I don't think the players, the manager will see it as pressure in the way that the fans are maybe looking at it, but they have to go out positive and get a result.
Yeah, definitely do. Paddy, as James says, 100% record for the campaign so far. First Celtic goals for Arne, Engels and McCowan at the weekend. It's all ticking along nicely, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a great start. I think this is obviously 5 games in now. We've been speaking highly about the performances that we've seen. I think for me, it seems to be just getting stronger and stronger. I know obviously we were nothing each at half time, as Miff and I mentioned just yesterday, but I think one of the things that you're kind of looking at this team now is that they're a lot more patient in the final third. They're not trying to rush it like we kind of seen in some games last season, especially around those stickier periods in December, coming into January and February. I think that for me it's the team that's on the park, they know the job at hand. They know what they need to do in order to break this kind of low block down that we face week in, week out. And Hearts, you know, I think the reason we eventually get there, Hearts are a fitter team than probably most, in my opinion. They do have some good players. They're probably ready for the likes of Celtic and Rangers, looking at the players that they're bringing in on that basis of we should be looking to try and get some points against those two teams. So I think a very, very good result at the end of the day. Could have been 3 or 4 as well. I think we do forget that a little bit. I think we should have had a few more on the day as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of decent chances. Arne Engels hits a post with a really decent effort. Keel goes through and goal. Yeah. Should do better. A couple of other half chances. I think Kuhn slid in at the back post for one as well. The headline, or at least one of the headlines, is around Kasper Schmeichel. He equalled a record that's been in place for 118 years by becoming the first Celtic keeper to keep 5 clean sheets in the opening 5 league games of the season. The last man to do so, James, was Tom Sinclair in the 1906-07 season. Tom was some money.
Is there not a bit of a quirk that he was on loan from Rangers?
I read that. So I don't know.
He'd a player out injury for some charity match.
Don't know too much about Tom and what he done in his career, but it's a hell of a record. And dress it up whatever way you want. You know, Celtic will face tougher sides as we go through the campaign, but you're doing something right, Paddy, as a team if you're equaling records that have lasted over a century.
Yeah, well, I think they'll be happy that it's definitely something that they can tick off for the season. I think it just shows that bit of unity, shows confidence in their goalkeeper as well, and Kasper Schmeichel. But it's a joint effort, isn't it? I think what we see from what we've seen from the back line this season has been really impressive. Really strong performances across the board in that category, and I think also we're seeing a bit more from our midfield in terms of the protection of that back four as well. I like to think that we're seeing a fitter Rio Hatate. I think it's actually aiding Callum McGregor a little bit as well in terms of him coming back in and supporting any attacks against us. So it's a well done to them, a nice little marker for them, I suppose, as well, kind of moving into an important run of games this season as well. But yeah, hopefully we break more records.
Hope so. I mean, James, Kasper Schmeichel's the one that gets the headline as such, but it's really a combined effort. It's down to him and the back four in front of him. The guys that we all know, it's Alistair Johnson, Carter Vickers, Liam Scales and Greg Taylor. They've started every game so far this season, and I think we spoke about this before. Ange's team were very effective for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was the back five rarely changed. It was Joe Hart and the back four in front of him. And I think we're seeing a similar thing going on this time around. And I think every individual there, or anyone that slots in, Tony Ralston, maybe some of the new guys, and we'll touch on that shortly, there's real pride there You know, that's something Liam Scales was talking actually after equaling the record and saying, yeah, we want to go on and make it a better record now. We want to go and extend it. And it just gives them a real focus. You know, defenders and goalies take pride in clean sheets, and it's a great thing to be working on at this moment in time.
It is. I mean, it's just... It's not the be all and end all. And sometimes with these records, it's actually better if you lose a goal and get out of the way and focus on just winning games and stuff. But once you get to this stage, like you said, you know, defenders and goalies start to get really kind of protective of that and trying to, you know, set something that can last for another 100 years. But what I would say as well is, of course, the back four and the goalie deserve all the plaudits, but Celtic defend so well from the front, and you saw it on Saturday. Engels has picked it up straight away. You know, when you lose the ball, the high press and heavy press to get that back, that keeps the ball away from defence, so it's not even getting to that last line. So it's a collective effort. But yeah, total plaudits to the goalie in the back four.
Just while I remember, actually, Kasper Schmeichel, there's someone who's tweeting at the moment, pretty much in the back of every weekend, and it's like this week's distribution by Kasper Schmeichel. I can't remember the account, and sorry about that. But the latest one,
Stuart Ross or something.
You might be right.
Yeah.
I'll retweet it on our timeline later on, so the person rightfully gets credit because he's picked out some great clips. Mm-hmm. And the one from the weekend was Kasper Schmeichel took a ball in the box, like grabbed a cross out the sky, whatever it was, looked up, got himself a bit of space, and he spun this ball out in the path of Daizen Maeda. Maeda ends up giving the ball away, which isn't the point. The ball into him was so accurate, and it turned defence into attack. By the time it gets to Maeda's feet, I think he's crossed the halfway line, and all of a sudden, you know,
kind of one-on-one
from an attack by Hearts, they're on the back foot. And I think there's so much more to Kasper Schmeichel than keeping clean sheets. And I say this with every respect to Joe Hart, who was great for Celtic. Schmeichel, from what I've seen so far, and I know you're still holding tight a wee bit in judgment, I think he's a clear upgrade. I really do. He'll get tougher tests, as I say. The whole defence will be tested, particularly in Europe here this season. But in terms of what he's shown, in terms of the on-the-ground stuff and his distribution, I think he takes it up another level.
No, I think it's a fair... Listen, I do think it's a fair opinion on him. I like what I've seen so far, and you're talking about the distribution. That's his dad over the back, isn't it? I think that was one of Peter Schmeichel's biggest assets, and probably a lot different for most goalkeepers. I know that a lot of it's passing out from the back now, but Schmeichel Senior was so quick in releasing the ball, as when I was obviously looking to try and forge a career in being a goalkeeper at the very young ages. I used to watch a lot of Schmeichel's stuff, and how he makes himself big. You see that in Kasper. How he gets the ball up the park. You see that in Kasper as well. I think that there's elements of his game that are really, really impressive, but it's also what, for me, is standing out the most is how switched on he is. I think it's very difficult in this league sometimes. He's not getting peppered with shots every game. You need to be awake. And I think that the way that we recycle the ball, we use every player on the park, and he's a massive part of that. He really has to be.
Yeah, I think your concentration levels need to stay so high. And even, you know, it certainly is the case domestically, but there's some games in Europe as well where Celtic goalies might not have much to do, but you need to be ready to spring into action. Yeah. And that's both in terms of, you know, keeping the ball out and making things happen.
I did kind of touch on it yesterday. I think, obviously, I'm not saying that the jury's still out in him. I don't think it is. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. What I was speaking to Miff about yesterday is that Europe is a different test. It's faster players. It's more intense. The pressure's on the players as well. You know, I think we've seen it time and time again with our back line, and time again with even our midfield. That little bit of pressure, it's one wrong touch and a team's in. You know, it can really come up against us. So I can't wait to see him in these moments. I can't wait to see what he brings to it. Is he going to bring that calm? Is he going to then install that calm in the rest of the team? I've got really high hopes for it, to be honest. I can't wait.
Yeah, definitely. I'm speaking there, James, about the goalie in the back four and how well they're doing. But in spite of that, I'm still pretty keen to see, you know, Baye at some point, of course, and Austin Trusty. Paddy, you and I done the pre-match, didn't we, before the weekend? Yeah. And I was suggesting that I didn't know if those guys would start the game, but I thought for sure they would end the game. And it's not transpired to be the case, you know, with those two figures mentioned, Trusty at centre-half and Baye at left-back. I think Paddy made the suggestion that Baye can play left and right back, so there would have been an opportunity. I think Arthur Johnson was struggling a wee bit towards the end of the game, maybe a bit tired. You know,
surprised he played 90 minutes.
Aye.
I was.
So why not maybe slot Baye in there? I'm not sure. The manager's made his calls and he's brought on the subs that he's brought on, but I'm now not sure when they get in, because my thinking generally was these guys have been signed for Europe to make us better for Europe. But Taylor was good again at the weekend. Liam Scales came out with a lot of credit at the weekend. They've equalled a record. What do you do? You know, when do you make that change? I do think when it comes to the crunch, Rodgers will be ruthless, because all good managers need to have the ability to be ruthless. But at the moment, the guys are doing the job, and it might just be a case of being a wee bit more patient for Trusty and for Vaya.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say with Rodgers is he's a very exacting and deliberate manager. Everything happens for a reason in his squad selections and his substitution selections. So if they're not on at the moment, it's either because the player in front of them is performing so well, and the guys are obviously performing well, or they're just not hitting their markers in training yet, and they're just getting up to speed with the system. Maybe there's a wee bit of fitness. I know Trusty was away travelling and things like that, so that might explain his. By less so, he's at Lennoxtown, but maybe he's got to get a few more stat markers on the board before he's fully ready. And Taylor's obviously it's already had the effect we hoped it would on Taylor, where he's raised his game. It shouldn't have to be that way, but it is. He's playing better, and the calls now are just get him signed up. I still think we need to work in that area, whether it's by he signed long term or whatever it may be. So I don't really join the clamour to get Taylor signed up on whatever money you care about kind of thing. I think that's got to be upgraded. But the reason he's got the jerseys, he's playing well.
Yeah, and Brendan Rodgers spoke on Friday at his press conference. He's keen to see Greg Taylor get a deal, get signed up, but he obviously at that point wouldn't come out and say, aye, but only as a backup. He can't come out and say that.
Yeah, he has said that to Taylor, but 100%.
Aye, behind the scenes.
I think so.
I'd have no doubt about it. I think that seems to be the case, and that's just football at that top level. It can be cutthroat, and maybe Greg Taylor, that's why he's swithering, potentially. Maybe he doesn't want to play second fiddle to anybody. He believes in himself, and rightly so. And that's a challenge for Baye to come in and show why there's such hype about him and why Barca have extended his deal and all those things. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But we now got into this game on Wednesday night, and we'll come to this later in the show. There's some calls to make. Do you stick or do you twist? And we'll see what the manager does. But for now, as I say, that back five have started every game so far. 5 league games, 1 League Cup game. And maybe it's not going to change particularly soon. We'll see. The other player, I mentioned him briefly, that I think a lot of folks are starting to get excited about and really get to see a bit more of is Luke McCowan. He comes in, he gets his goal. I think he's off to a good start because he's a Celtic fan, and you can dress it up whatever way you want. Fans enjoy that. The fact that he's living the dream. He's like he has one of us and all that stuff, and he's managed to progress his career and make his way to Celtic Park. But as we covered recently, James, not just here to take part and be I was once on the books at Celtic. I think he wants to have an impact, and scoring goals is one sure way to do that, and he got on the score sheet of the weekend.
It wasn't even the goal, it was the start of that move, was him just taking control, putting his foot in the ball, calming everything down, because it was a wee bit kind of panicky. Hearts were having a wee bit of a go, we're only one up, it's getting to the latter stages of the game, and he just calmed it right down, and then found a move, started a move, and followed the play up, and James's held it up, and then he's got it to McCowan and he scored his goal. Yep. I mean, I watched it in the Cock Tavern down in London, and the place just went bananas, because it's a Celtic fan scoring a goal, only 2 games, his first, his second game off the bench for Celtic kind of thing, and just everyone was just delighted to see it, but I don't think he's in any way going to be a bit part player. I think he's going to be a big player for Celtic. Yeah,
that's the question, Paddy. So he looks like he's settled into life very quickly, and I suppose as opposed to any foreign signing, it's easier for a guy like Luke McCowan to adapt. But do you think he's maybe going to have a bigger part to play than we maybe suspected?
Yeah, because I do think there'll be a lot more rotation within our midfield this season, especially an extra game in Europe, extra 2 games in Europe.
Extra plus.
Extra plus. And then qualify. And exactly, I think that's where we've got to kind of look at the depth of our team. I'm pretty sure that, I'm sure we'll touch on, obviously, how important a game it is on Wednesday. If we lay a marker down in that game, then you look at the other games coming up in October, you're then starting to think, if we get maybe out of the October with 5 or 6 points on the board, you're then starting to think, right, hang on, do we start looking at players that are going to even bolster the team even stronger, because there's a potential of us getting to the playoffs. So McCowan, I don't think was ever going to get brought in just to be a squad player. I think that there has been a real talent there, and I think that he's had an incredible couple of seasons. Dundee have been playing some really, really nice football in the Scottish League, and I think that it's credit to him. I remember a lot of people asking the question, well, what's this guy going to bring that Tomoki Iwata can't bring? And I think that there's so many different factors in their style of play. I think the dynamism from Luke McCowan is what stands out the most. I think he's going to offer us so much more going forward. Some of those driving runs that you see from Callum McGregor at times, where he carries it and all of a sudden you're in the final third. You don't get that from Iwata. You do not get that at all in that holding position. And there are little differences that we needed to look at.
I think McCowan and McGregor actually are pretty similar in terms of the type of midfielder they are. You know, we talk about, you know, there's a guy a 6, you know, a more defensive midfielder. He's actually more of a 10, more attacking. I think McGregor and McCowan are 8s. I think they're those kind of box-to-box midfielders that can do both jobs when required. And I actually think that's why McCowan might see a bit more game time in Europe than we anticipated. I think at times you'll be under the cosh. And if you've got two guys that can be sitting in, can be defence-minded, it might be McCowan and McGregor that find themselves lining up alongside each other at times.
I would still say I think he would be the guy that comes on with the last half hour. I genuinely think for me, you look at that kind of like almost a terror to play against, which we've seen from Paulo Bernardo against Rangers. That's why he, for me, isn't in the starting lineup. I agree with Miff last night. I think he's been rested for Wednesday night. I think he's in your team sheet, 100%. I think he brings an awful lot. Yeah,
I'll get your take on that, James. So Paddy and Miff particularly suggested that Bernardo was a guy that Rodgers liked in Europe. He's unlucky to miss out of the weekend. He's not done a lot wrong. He's scored these, played a big part against Rangers, scored for his under-21s for Portugal during the break, and he finds himself on the bench. Celtic don't and can't sign guys for £11 million and not play them, so we understand that. But from Paulo Bernardo's point of view, he's been doing his job and he finds himself out. But do you think he'll get back in soon enough, Wednesday or otherwise?
Even when he wasn't getting that much game time last season, he still got picked for Europe.
Yeah.
You know, so he does a lot of dirty work off the ball, you know, a lot of the pressing, you know, a lot of kind of just digging in, getting the ball back and blocking tackles and all these kind of things. So Rodgers obviously likes him in a European sense, you know, in that style. So it's tough, you know, if we were to start predicting Wednesday's lineup now, which we'll have to do in the next couple of days. But it's really tough, and it's the best kind of tough you want, because there's opportunities for everyone there for different reasons. You say you can't leave £11 million guy on the bench. If he's not the right guy for that game, Rodgers can and will.
I think Hatate misses out. I do. I know we'll come on to it, but I do. I think that it makes sense for me that you want to keep Paulo Bernardo ticking over. You want to keep Rio Hatate on his toes because we know what he can bring to the party. I do think he comes in. Yeah,
let's see. We'll get to that, as I say, just in a bit. Last point, just covering the weekend. Just when it looked like Rio Hatate was going to step up and take the penalty, Callum McGregor steps in. There's a short discussion and they pass the ball to Arne Engels. But all good. Rio Hatate seemed quite happy with it, and we can see it in the alternative angle, or the unique angle, sorry. It's all fine. There's no grief there. What's your general thoughts on how that played out, Paddy?
Just good leadership.
Yeah,
just very clever leadership. I think you're setting your new player up, bedding him in with the team, bedding him in with the fans, and really professional from Rio Hatate as well. And I think once McGregor explained, here's why, you've kind of got to look at our history of penalties lately. Matt O'Reilly seemed to find a little bit of consistency with it, but before that, it's pretty dire.
Yep.
Give this guy a clean slate. He's obviously done something in training that showed, he's quite composed there. And as we touched on last night, even better when you see the cries of trying to put him off, which I know happens all the time, but absolutely brilliant.
I know it's part of football, but it's pretty cheap stuff. Was it
Halkett? Amateur.
That's funny, man.
It happens. It's just you don't often hear it, but it happens at all levels. Quick quiz for you. So Paddy was talking about Celtic's penalties, and we've had some mixed fortunes last season. 5 players took penalties for Celtic last season. Can you name them? Big bonus points if you can name how many they scored and how many they missed, but we'll get to that. So 5 players. Any?
Rio.
Yeah.
O'Reilly.
No Kyogo.
Ida
O'Reilly.
McGregor.
Nope. One of these guys is still here, and one of them isn't.
Turnbull.
He scored
the first goal of the season. Yeah. And the last one, I'll give you a massive clue. He's from Honduras and his name's Luis
Palma.
Luis Palma. So just the record, Luis Palma took 5 penalties last season, scored 3 out of 5. He started well, didn't he? His first few were good, and then something happened. So he scored 3 out of 5. David Turnbull scored 3 out of 4. Ida scored 2 out of 3, as did Matt O'Reilly. And Rio Hatate scored 1 out of 2, so only 50% for Rio. Arne Engels, 100% record, so let's see how that plays out. As I mentioned there, Paddy and Miff covered the win over Hearts in detail on the Final Whistle show, and that's available right now wherever you get your podcast. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll crack on with this week's listeners' questions. Welcome back, folks. We'll kick off this week's listeners' question section with a question from Grassy, good friend of the show, and let's hear now what he had to say.
How you doing, guys? It's Grassy here. Just wondering, at the weekend there, not our most sparkling performance, but definitely professional, pretty resilient as well. But one of the things that I think stood out to me was the celebrations, the goal celebrations. I quite enjoyed the Celtic unique angle stuff. That's a few things that's thrown up now that I think can actually be pretty valuable. Engels obviously getting heckled and shouted at for the penalty, and he just buries it just as calm as you like. But then the moment we had Tatty afterwards, the wee kind of acknowledgements with Rodgers and things like that, and then even McCowan's celebration, seeing some of the players piling in. McGregor obviously looks like he's taking a lot of time in Forest. Some of the guys that have been there and done that, but it looks like they've really kind of taken to him straight away. Looks like we've got a good camaraderie, we're a good unit, and even through games like that where it is a bit sticky and it's a bit tough, it looks like these new guys have settled right in and everybody's kind of playing for each other. What's the thoughts ahead of Wednesday? Any changes, or do we go with the starting lineup that we had at the weekend?
So as you heard, the question from Grassy, it's kind of twofold, a few things to cover off there, so let's take it in two parts. James, first of all, what do you think of the team spirit that we're seeing from the boys just now?
It's fantastic. Rodgers must do something on that, because it's been that way when he was there the first time, and it's been that way since the start of last season. It's funny, unique angle does show that, but you maybe don't appreciate it. And I've been watching last season, Matt O'Reilly's goals and whatever kind of thing. They're all together, and everyone's just, it's the only person that doesn't get there's the goalie, and sometimes he does. So it's a real sign of togetherness in your team. If you ever see a team that's celebrating goals and it's just one or two guys, big problems. So it's great to see.
I think that's spot on, Paddy. I think the way players celebrate together is as good an indicator as any. And sometimes, if you're at the game, you score a goal, you might be celebrating with the folks around you and you maybe don't quite pick up on, he went over to see him specifically for the assist or whatever it is. The unique angle's spot on, because you see, and it's kind of down at ground level, you see exactly what's going on and the various interactions, and the fact that there's most, if not all, the team minus the goalie up there celebrating for each of Celtic's goals just now. It's great to see. The other indicator is something we touched on a moment ago. It's the way that Hatate and Engels agreed with Callum McGregor's leadership, as you say, agreed on the penalty situation with no bad blood. You see it, I think Chelsea had a situation recently and they've got a couple of temperamental characters and there was like guys taking the huff because they weren't getting it. Nothing like that, and I think the spirit looks spot on just now.
That's a winning mentality, but I think it really is. And I think that if you've got a leader like Callum McGregor in there who has seen it all, when you think about what he's been through and what he the players that he's played under, the managers that he's worked under, I think that there is no room for that kind of error. There really isn't. If that is anywhere near it, I think those players are quickly moved on. I think we've seen it in little spells under Lennon. We've seen it in spells under Ange, and we've seen it in spells obviously last season with Rodgers. I think if there's any players that are kind of there to upset the party, it doesn't really last long for them. Players are coming into a very good environment, and I'm pretty sure that is a selling point for Celtic as well, in terms of here, this is what to expect. It's a team environment. It's not an individual environment. I mean, even you look at some of the pre-match shots you see for some games down in the Premier League, and they're all walking off team buses with the headphones on. They're coming onto the park with the headphones on. I'm like, God, guys, you must not like each other. I know we're sitting with headphones on the night, but that's a different matter. Like it's because I'm listening to you, James. No, I think that there is a difference there, and it's been a nice continuation. The fact that we've got the likes of James Forrest, the likes of Callum McGregor that have played under Brown, they've played under Lustig, they've played under those early points. Like I bring big characters back, the likes of Chris Commons in the team. All guys that have been big players for us over those years. They will have seen what it takes to win. They will have seen what works, but they've also been under pressure. And I'm coming away from the Lennon season. I'm looking at what Ange Postecoglou installed as well. And I loved that line from Ange when he said, that's their domain. That changing room at Lennoxtown is theirs. It's not for me. So something has to be set there, and I think it has been. And I think that is a continuation of that. Yeah,
there was an interesting clip down the rounds last week. You might have seen it. It was James Maddison, so played under Brendan Rodgers at Leicester, and then joined Spurs where he's hooked up with Ange. And he was talking about, he speaks very highly of both managers, but he was talking about the differences. And he had some early conversations with Ange, but Ange isn't overly my door is always open kind of manager. He'll speak at different times, but he's not as close with his players, James. He's not into not saying the touchy-feely man management, but I think he kind of sets his stall out, puts out his values and what he believes in and things of that nature, and then steps back. And as Paddy says, lets the players manage their own domain, for want of a better expression. Whereas Brendan Rodgers is very hands-on. You see still images all the time just now. You know, you get photos from Lennoxtown on a Friday, and Rodgers, it's like he welcomes every player onto the training ground individually. There's high fives right, left and centre. And there's more to it. I'm not just saying, you know, a couple of high fives and that's your team spirit sorted. No. It's clear that there's just a good connection between manager and players there, and we're seeing it in front of our very eyes in the game time stuff.
Yeah, and like you say, both can work, but if I was to pick, I think I do prefer Rodgers' style. I think Ange's style can work when you've got a strong leader like Cal McGregor in there, you know, and that's maybe something that's not quite clicking at Spurs at the moment with, you know, Song as captain. I don't know, but certainly with McGregor, he can carry that message forward and, you know, be the link man into the dressing room. But with Rodgers, you've got that really close relationship. You see, even a few weeks ago, he's coming away from the pitches of Lennoxtown with Rio Hattati with a clipboard. He's kind of showing him, you know, positions and tactics and all that stuff. I think he sees himself as an educator as much as anything else. That's a bit David Brenty kind of thing. I'm an educator first. But I think he does. You know, he wants to teach these guys, you know, how to play football in the way that he wants it to be played, and it's certainly working. So yeah, it's something that I'm really enjoying.
I'm just imagining poor son down at Spurs listening and going,
what have I done?
Me for?
Well, just lost a subscriber.
What's my problem? The other question I was going to ask just regarding team spirit, does it help, and I say this with every respect to the players I'm about to mention, but does it help when you don't have excess players around the training ground who are frustrated at not being part of things and not featuring? I think of guys who Celtic have moved on for the most part. Lager Bielka, you know, last season Lager Bielka, Awata not playing much football, Kwon who's had to go out on loan, other figures, Haksabanovic didn't work out, Mikey Johnson not playing lots of games, things like that. And I'm sure they've been professional throughout, but it's natural to be a bit annoyed and a wee bit, you know, frustrated at what's going on. The bottom line is, we've all gone on at length about how good the signings seem to have been, you know, in the summer window, and we'll see over time just how well it plays out. But it is so important to have moved on the guys who were never going to feature, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that is, you know, it catches on to the last question. Rodgers does want that intimate relationship with these players, and you just can't have that when you've got more and more players that, first and foremost, aren't going to play for you on Saturday, so you're not going to spend that much time with them. They're so far out, they're not making squads. So as much for the player to get football, it clears things up at Celtic as well, in terms of Rodgers can then get that close relationship with the guys that he knows want to be there and he wants to be there. And it was a problem that he kind of semi-inherited with that crazy transfer window, you know, when he first came back. So he made no, you know, excuses for that. He wanted a small kind of sub-25 man squad, and we were sitting at like 33, 34 plus kids that were, you know, starting to break through the Daniel Kelly's of this world and stuff. So getting that down to something more manageable, it bodes well for everyone at Celtic and having left Celtic.
You don't hear about a lot of drama at Celtic as well, in terms of what is happening behind the scenes. I think the only one we're really properly unsure about is James McCarthy. I think if he was training with the youth teams, I would probably like to think that that's in the agreement of, hey, give some of your experience and give some of your help here.
He's not even on the website.
No, I'm talking about like from previous seasons. Right. I don't know his whereabouts just now, sadly. I don't know what's happened there. But for me, a big factor of that is that there isn't much humming and hawing from Celtic at all. I think we touched on this yesterday about Lewis Palma. He, I think, took to Instagram a couple of times in terms of frustration. But then, as I said, he was quoted over the international break. He was getting interviewed and saying, hey, there's players playing better than me. That's why I'm not in the team. And I need to get myself up there. That's the mentality.
I thought that was good to hear. I heard you saying that. I thought it was good.
Yeah. We'll come on to later in the show, but he is the main man in that Celtic post-season DVD. He is the cheerleader. He's all over it. Aye, he's
going for it. Yeah. I was chatting to some folks we all know last season, Paddy, I think it was Marty and Stevie, and I kept saying, Palmer's got something, and they're like, aye, but what has he got? I'm like, I don't know, but it's something. He's got something. And I think he'll play a part this season, and I think he's realised, whether it's through some sharp words for Brendan Rodgers or otherwise, there's nothing that gives a player a message better than being a sub not used or not even in the squad. Yeah. And I think at some point the penny's dropped for Louis Palmer. He's been at a decent level, he's an international footballer, but I think he realises if he wants to be something more at Celtic, then he has to do something more, and I think we'll see that from him. So time will tell. I love to say I told you so, sorry. So hopefully I'll be able to say that to Marty and Stevie.
I hate to be wrong, guys.
I just really hate to be wrong, that's the main thing. Paddy, last question. I was speaking to Grassy separate to his question, and he was talking about some of his mates had left the game on Saturday unsure about the Hatate and Engels thing and how it played out, and he's like, oh, I think Hatate looked a wee bit disgruntled, blah blah blah. They then go home, and whenever the unique angle is released, they go, oh, turns out it's all spot on, it's all good here. And Grassy, he really likes a unique angle because it kind of shows you everything, and it doesn't allow any mischievous headlines from any of the kind of titles that operate up here in Scotland to say, oh, player not happy with this or such and such not happy with that. It just puts it all out there, and it kind of dispels any myths. And I think generally it's one of the best things Celtic do from a multimedia point of view, and they're usually spot on, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool. We all look forward to them coming out on that Monday. I think some of my favourites of the unique angle have been at Ibrox, especially at the opposite end.
It was quiet.
And it's just that noise. It's like the realisation that they've lost a goal, and then just hearing our support go tonto at the other side of the park's one of the best things ever.
You get pitch side audio with it as well. So you can hear the players just having normal celebrations.
Sometimes it's just that we kind of click the net makes when the ball just catches the back of the net.
And then that delayed noise is just one of the best things ever.
It's absolutely spot on. So, as I say, Grassy's question's twofold. So, in terms of the second part, and we were touching on it in the first part of the show here, do we think we'll see any changes in the starting 11 on Wednesday against Slovan Bratislava, or do we go with the same 11 that started against Hearts? Paddy, there's a few questions, and we'll bounce through them here, but the midfield three is a really interesting one for me. So, you think Bernardo comes in for Hatate? Is that the move?
I think he might, I do. I think Paulo Bernardo has basically been brought back here because he showed glimpses of what he's capable of last season. I think for me, I don't know about you guys, but it seems to be a fitness thing for Bernardo. Is he going to give you 90 minutes of that same intense energy? Because he puts a lot into the game. I think in some of the European games he played last season, most notably Atletico Madrid, and he had a really, really good game, but he was whipped off after an hour, and I was a little bit unsure, like what's the next steps for him. He's played okay here, but he's not went up a level. He's been more of an impact player for us off the bench last season, but I just thought he was everywhere in that game against Rangers, but then he didn't have the legs for that for 90 minutes. So I think, considering what we're kind of looking at, what we need to do in Europe, we need to like get the 3 points in this game. And I tell you what, if we go into it with a strong lineup, which it's looking like we've got now, we should be thinking about an emphatic win and try and really giving ourselves a head start. Bernardo plays for me in that. I think his reading of the game, I think his tracking back, he does a lot more tracking back than what Rio Hatate does, in my opinion.
So it's Rio that drops out in your opinion?
I would say so.
So it's McGregor, Bernardo and Engels.
You said it earlier on, I don't think you can put a guy worth 11 million on the bench at this point, but it's not to say that Hatate doesn't come on for either or, to be honest. I think it's going to be Bernardo for me.
James, Grassy's asking the question, will we see any changes? And we might, and I'll get your thoughts in a second, but Brendan Rodgers, generally speaking, doesn't make a lot of changes. He's not a guy that takes the opportunity against lesser opposition, quote unquote, or League Cup games to say, well, I'm going to rest 4, 5, 6 guys. He makes a couple of changes at most, usually 2, maybe 3 at a real push. I don't think...
With players at his disposal, but I would say.
You think he's got more options now than he used to have?
More than we've had.
I think it's cutthroat time. I really do.
Right. So on that then, James, I mean, first of all, midfield 3, do you agree with that or disagree? And do you see any other changes beyond that?
I think that's the only change. I think it's Bernardo for Rio. I just don't think we've seen it. I think we'd have liked to have seen some more of Bally and Trusty by now. But it's all part and parcel of late signings in the window. You don't get a chance to get these guys up to speed. They haven't had that opportunity to have a couple of games early in the season. So I think that would be tricky to try and slot them into what's clearly a high-performing back four and goalie. So I think that stays the same. I think Kuhn and Maeda are doing their bit. Kyogo's doing his bit. It really just is the midfield, so it's Bernardo for Rio.
I agree mostly. I think the back five definitely doesn't change, and Trusty and Bayo need to bide their time. You've got the midfield wrong.
Oh.
I just think he sticks with what he's doing. I think that's why he started that on Saturday, and I think it's McGregor, Engels and Rio Hatate. But I wouldn't be disappointed either way, and I don't think any fans would, and I think that's the great position to be in. I think there's real genuine alternatives there. He could throw a real curveball and start to look McCowan, who knows? Probably unlikely, but all of a sudden, we covered this last week or the week before, there's those five guys I've mentioned. Odenholm's further removed from that at this moment in time. But I think generally speaking, any 3 from 5, give or take, most of us are quite happy and we think they can do a decent job. I agree with the wide men. I think it's Kuhn and Maeda's shirts all day long at this moment in time. Is Kyogo doing enough to be guaranteed to be the man instead of Adam Ida?
Yeah. I think he fits with the football Rodgers wants to play. There's games that no doubt are going to suit Adam Ida. Saturday could have been one, big kind of lumps at the back that Hearts have got, but it's more likely you're kind of Ross County away, Dundee away, that kind of thing, where Ida might slot in. But for Wednesday night, it's going to be a fast-flowing game. I really like what Ida does, and I really like, the goal didn't count, but I really like the way he took that and made himself big in the box and just held off the guy. So he's obviously got a lot to bring to the party for big numbers as well. So we want to see him playing and contributing. Just a shame that he's going to get chalked off on Saturday correctly. But I think the way we're playing, it's all for fast-flowing Kyogo style goals.
And I definitely agree with that. I think the wee man will start. But what I would say is that the joy of this bench now as well is massive for us. So we can take the game in 2 stages effectively.
Yeah.
One being that hour mark and then 30 minutes to go and finish the job effectively. I don't know about the back line. I still feel like this is where Brendan Rodgers earns his money, right? And I think that we've been crying out for things to be addressed in terms of a defence for quite a little bit. And again, I can't fault Liam Scales and I can't fault Greg Taylor for the performances they've put in at the beginning of this season. I will say again, though, Liam Scales had a very, very good game defensively against Rangers. He didn't have a great game going forward. We need to go and win games. We can't see how it goes. Do you know what I mean? And this is where this is where our manager should be making these decisions. Like, is Austin Trusty going to come in and bring the ball out through the back a lot quicker than what I've got at the moment? Because if that's the case, then he has to start.
Yeah.
I mean,
see it happen.
As I say, I've not done my Slovan Bratislava research. I think they won 2-1 away from home at the weekend.
They've only lost one game.
I think they're top of the tree.
We can't be sentimental. That's what I'm trying to say. There's
about Slovan Bratislava?
Not about Slovan, but I think as fans we're very, very quick to be sentimental about players that we don't want to see come into the team, even though we've seen those performances, we've seen the vulnerabilities of both our left-sided defenders, and we've said they're good for domestic league, but we need to improve in Europe. Does it happen now? I think it could.
Yeah.
I think it could.
Liam Scales has been brilliant for Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers has sung the praises of Liam Scales just in the last few weeks. But also, if Brendan Rodgers needs to drop him, he will drop him.
Yeah.
That's his job. And as you say, sentimentality can't come into play here. And I just think Brendan Rodgers operates on a full-scale meritocracy when it comes to football. And if you're doing your job,
I feel like that,
and you're performing well enough, you're in. And I think that's regardless of what you've done yesterday or the day before. I think it's all about moving forward. And if he feels that Austin Trusty, for example, is the better option in this game against Slovan Bratislava, where I think Celtic will have the lion's share of possession, and where Liam Scales is at his best as a defender, in its truest sense. He's not at his best when he has to bring the ball out and find those penetrating passes. Now, I've not seen a lot of Austin Trusty either, but I believe he's been signed to be that guy. And as Paddy says, James, this is where Brendan Rodgers earns his pennies. This is where he makes the big calls, and it's exactly why he's in place to do so.
Yeah, and I think in the fullness of time, that is the move. Both positions, they were both signed for a reason. I just think it's not too soon, but they just haven't enough game time. Rodgers will do an awful lot of his assessment on the training pitch, and he'll know what he's got before he picks guys for first 11. But I just think if there'd been a couple of games where they could have played even 60 minutes and things, then he would know an awful lot more about them. It's not just about you, it's about how you interact with the guys, either side of you and in front of you and behind you. So that takes time, especially in this system. It's, like I said last week, it's quite a technical system. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't see it.
Probably a really good reason why Saturday was a little bit out of sync from what we've started on this season. Engels coming in, upsetting a little bit of the flow in that. However, I still think he had a very strong game. But what I'm meaning is that the way we've kind of got to look at it is in terms of that cutthroat side of things. 2 weeks tomorrow night, we're playing Borussia Dortmund. It's coming thick and fast now. So when is the right time?
Yeah, and the thing is, you might not need Austin Trusty or Alex Baye for Slovan, but you certainly will. If they are the upgrade, which we hope they're going to be, then you certainly will need them for Dortmund away, which is our toughest game in the whole setup.
Agreed.
So they've got to be up to speed by then. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, in conclusion, for Grass's question, He might make some changes, but he might not.
I don't know, mate.
It's where we've got to. Stop asking us such hard questions. So we'll see. But listen, a big thanks to Gracie for his questions this week. If you want us to cover your questions on next week's show, then it couldn't be easier to do so. Just visit our website at thecelticexchange.com. Click the leave voicemail button that you'll see on every page of our site. Record your question, and we could be featuring you in the show this time next week. Alternatively, if you'd prefer to go down a more traditional route, just email me, Tino, at thecelticexchange.com. Let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll do this week's Mystery Goal Scorer. Welcome back. We'll begin this final section of this week's show, as always, with our Name the Goal Scorer feature. The rules for anyone who hasn't yet played along, very simple. We'll play a clip from a notable Celtic goal, but the goal scorer's name has been beeped out from the commentary, and all you have to do is name the goal scorer in question. Before we kick on, let's reveal the answer by playing last week's clip in full.
They need to get the ball in the box. Rodgers, it's a good cross, it's a chance, it's a goal! Yeah! Anthony Ralston for Celtic in the 97th minute!
James, I think it was yourself and Joe last week. You both got that one okay, didn't you? So, as we heard, Tony Ralston, massive goal for Ange during that first season. It was 15th of December 2021, a 97th minute winner against Ross County. Really important for a few different reasons. Abada opened the scoring on the night, but County equalised in the second half. Starfelt then gets sent off for getting elbowed in the face, worked that one out, and then Tony Ralston steps up when it all looked like it was lost. It was a big moment for Ange Postecoglou's first season.
It was huge, but we were finding our feet. We were really starting to gather that little bit of momentum. The games were still very, very tight when you think back to that time as well, but we were clinging on, and I think it was at those points they were actually starting to look over their shoulder that little bit after getting an early lead in the league. Things were coming together, but we still come up against a lot of obstacles. I still go back to, I keep thinking about that St Mirren game where we had half a team out.
And all the young boys playing stuff.
The stuff we overcame that season, just a brilliant year for us. So no, a really, really good night that, and just I know a moment that guy will cherish for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Have you been up there? Have you been to Ross County?
I've been to Dingwall once.
What likes it?
It's I can't really remember.
You could have made something up there. Nobody would have known.
It's a long road up.
I'm being brutally honest.
James, in the commentary, I think it was Jerry McCulloch and maybe Tom Boyd in the background losing his mind. But it was such a huge moment, and it's a big moment for Tony Ralston. Tony Ralston, at times, he's in and out, and he's kind of bit part player to an extent, but he let's just do the remix there. He proved that night, and he continues to prove that he has a part to play for Celtic, and an important part of that.
Hugely. That's the night we won the title. That was just massive. You know, there's great Celtic goals and there's important Celtic goals, and that's one of the most important Celtic goals of the modern era. You know, having what had happened during the COVID season, Ange coming in, going a bit behind in the league, getting, it was just tough, just really, really tough, and getting that win, in the face of the adversity of how Starfelt was treated. I can't remember having celebrated. I wasn't at the game; I was just in my house. Can't remember having celebrated a goal so strongly in a long, long time. I went absolutely bananas. Well, I suppose like something close. It was at the game, Abada's goal against the D United. Doing those late goals, because without that goal, we could just have not unravel, but just not managed to kind of get ourselves in time and to be like, okay, we didn't get it this year, we'll get it next year kind of thing. Tony did it, and he did it against Hibs as well last season. No Tony, no title.
The tackle that he made that led to Celtic's penalty. Yeah, I agree with that. Paddy, some clickbait kind of headlines from James there the night we won the title with that Tony Ralston goal. I think it's fair to say, or it's certainly at least one of the nights or one of the results that won the title.
I think so. As I say, it kept us kind of just clawing away at things. A pivotal moment in the season, but I can see the argument for it, considering the United game had way strengthened after that point. Was that just before the Rangers game? Yeah,
because you had
Ben Doak doing his thing.
Yeah, that was before the Rangers game on the Wednesday night.
We signed O'Reilly, Hatate and Maeda. Yeah.
So I think we'd bolstered a little bit in terms of what we were trying to push on for the rest of that season. So I think you've got a fair claim there. I do. I just no worries, mate, anytime. I think a brilliant goal, a brilliant moment for him, but it's the celebrations are just magic, because one of those nights you're up against everything and we overcome it.
Yeah, it was great to see. Great moment for Tony Ralston, obviously, as we all know, boyhood Celtic fan, and great to see. And he was such an important part that season, and he continues to do his job. Okay, let's take a listen to this week's mystery goal scorer. Let's play the clip.
A bright and breezy start from Celtic. And a game they have to win to even have a chance of taking the title race further. His first Old Firm goal, and typically it's a beauty.
Well, what a marvellous finish this is. Great first touch, he gets it out from his feet, and look at the bend and the dip on that one. He's right through it, and just look how much that moves away from McGregor. He thinks it's going to his left, but look at it on the end.
No conferring. Paddy's got the answer. James, you're looking to steal. You're looking to steal the points. It's because
So the
Paddy,
points.
because Paddy whispered it to you over the mic there. I seen it.
What did I do? You asked me for the answer, I gave me the answer. Okay. I don't know how this game works.
It is the correct answer. We'll beep it out. Do you know it's one of those when the commentary's good there. Obviously, it starts with the goal scorer's name beeped out, but then he goes into elaborating it, and it becomes pretty clear, I think, as to who it was. It'd be great to get into that one in a bit of detail just now, but we need to keep our powder dry for next week.
I know, I've got so many things I want to say.
So make sure you're here next Monday, Paddy. You can wax lyrical about that goal. But as always, we'll reveal the answer in next week's show, and we'll also share the clip on socials for anyone who wants to have a go there. To see out the show, there's 2 different pieces of content that were released last week, and both will be of interest to Celtic fans in different ways. The first video was the SFA September VAR review. It's a new monthly show by the SFA that provides a behind-the-scenes look at some of the biggest VAR calls made that month, hosted by Gordon Duncan, and episode 1 featured new head of refereeing Willie Collum. The second video was Inside the Huddle, exclusive access to the inside story of Celtic's 2023-24 double winning season. Paddy, what one do you want to talk about first?
We'll get the boring one out the way first.
Okay, the VAR
So Celtic season. No, I think really, really impressed with Willie Collum actually coming out and really kicking this off. I think it will bring some moments of scrutiny, absolutely, but again, I think that's for fans hopefully to take a wee step back and realise that there are humans involved in what's going on there as well, and there will be error. There will be error no matter what we do with VAR. There will be mistakes. Do I like VAR? Absolutely not. I hate it. I think it ruins the spectacle altogether, but we've got it for now.
It's not going anywhere, so we might as well get better at it.
Aye.
And I think this is a step towards that. James, I think whether you like VAR or not, more transparency all round on how refs are getting to their decisions must be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the refs have had a year and a half or so of, just taking the mick and using VAR to benefit one team. That's how it's been.
Do you think so?
Aye, I do.
You honestly
do.
think they've just said, let's cheat for a year and a half?
I think the unconscious bias in certain referees has allowed itself to play out, and they're in the VAR room as well as being on the pitch. I just do believe that. I think there's too many examples for it not to be the case. But with Willie Collum bringing this in, it just shows the scrutiny on that. I mean, on the ones he showed, Greg Aiken's involved in 2 of them. How many times can that VAR operator be making mistakes? So I think Collum's doing
twice,
something.
I suppose.
Twice in one show. I think what Collum is doing is saying, there's the rope. If you keep showing up on this and you're not willing to train and learn and better yourself and work against your unconscious bias, then it's not going to last. I think it's a fantastic thing. I really do.
If you work against your unconscious bias, surely it's a conscious bias by that point where you've realised you've got
conscious.
it. I think that Willie Collum done, which was really good, was he then followed up by going on to talk about it on Super Scoreboard. It's one thing making your video where you can cut and edit and do these things and say, right, put that 30 minutes out, that's safe enough. He's then gone on and they opened the phone lines out to any Rockets that want to call up, to be honest with you. And I thought that was quite a good thing. And I caught most of that show, whatever day it was last week. And I thought he gave pretty solid answers, Paddy. He's first thing to do, and I think he done it well, was put the pause up and says, we're going to make mistakes. And he was asked about, for example, say it as Greg Aiken, if somebody phoned and asked if they continue to make mistakes, surely they should be demoted and different things. He said the key word there was continually. And he says if people do make mistake after mistake after mistake, they will get kind of bumped down the leagues for a wee bit and retrained or whatever it might be. But if Greg Aiken or somebody makes what's deemed to be a one-off mistake, he wants to work with his refs to educate them and make them better and train them. And I think the bottom line is if refs are better trained and better educated in the software and different things with VAR, then again it's got to benefit us somewhere.
It has to. I think one of the things that has been coming up about referees over the last 10, 15 years especially is that the number of really, really top high referees has dwindled. They're not getting opportunities in terms of European Championships, World Cups, because the level isn't there. Well, we're always told that was because we never had VAR. Actually, it wasn't the case. It's because the level's not been there and it's not been there for a long time. I think that's where we need to look at our organisation, the SFA, and ask them, why is this not being invested into properly? Why is it only open to certain occupations for a start as well? There's another, like, that is so backwards, it's unbelievable.
He was asked about that.
Yeah, I'd heard his response on it, and I think that's great to see that we've got someone a bit more forward thinking in terms of where can we take refereeing to the next level. They're talking a lot about going full time. These guys are getting £900 a game. That is a very good earner for most people on a part-time
That's more than you get for a show here.
Well, listen, we'll have a word about that. No, but I just think that there is so much more that the SFA can do. I'm not talking about fast-tracking referees through. I do think that the setup of going through the grades in order to get to where you need to be is there, but there needs to be, for me, a lot more in place in terms of the appeal to being able to come in and do that. I just don't think that that's there, and that's where I think that we're falling short on. We don't have quality referees. There's probably referees out there that are at a good level. Are they getting watched? Are they getting the right treatment? Are they getting brought through correctly? I don't know. It doesn't look like it. I think the only one recently that I've thought who has come in and has actually showed real transparency and is actually seems to be kicking on as a good referee is Matthew McDermott. I think there's a real settled feeling around the part when he's there. But there's also, I think there needs to be more debate in terms of what we are seeing with the rules and whether or not they're being implemented, whether they're not, they're letting a lot of things during games slide in terms of time wasting, in terms of balls being kicked away, in terms of warnings for first, second or third tackles. I think the consistency that they seem to have found with handball decisions this season, for example, that needs to be the same across the board with all of these things that are actually slowing the game down. You're in Celtic Park for almost 2 hours and 15 minutes now.
Yeah, as an entertainment product, you're there to see a game and it's dragging on, and there's things of that nature that have to be improved on. But I think you're right, they do seem to have found or agreed on a consistent application of the rules for handball now, and that's got to be a healthy thing. And maybe that was the priority, and maybe maybe when they nail that, they then say, right, let's sort the time wasting and let's sort the this, that and the next thing. So I think generally speaking it's good. I also know, and they mentioned on Super Scoreboard Willie column, that they've introduced a refereeing, what would you call it, like a module that young folks, I think in maybe 4th, 5th and 6th year at school can go and do effectively a term of refereeing. And some of those young folks might decide, I want to be involved in football, I'm not good enough to play it. Maybe there's a path for me to go down, and I think that might bring through a new generation of referees, which would be a healthy thing, because at the moment it's felt a wee bit like a closed shop. The most refs at the top level also seem to have this kind of professional career, whether it's solicitors and lawyers and policemen and all that kind of stuff. Maybe we're opening out to a different generation altogether, and it might be a very healthy thing moving forward. Obviously, one of the things, James, that got most folks talking was when it cut to the Celtic clips, the biggest one being your man Greg Aitken, who didn't team up apparently when Robin McCrory's just wiped out Kyogo. I thought, at the time I'm there at the game and I thought, well, there's a penalty. Don't worry, he's going to VAR, we'll be cool here. And we don't get it.
It's the attitude in his voice. Check over, Don. Shut up, mate.
He's rapid on it.
Check over,
Nothing
Don.
to see there, Donaldo, move on. But to be fair to Willie Collum, he then says, we got that wrong. Yeah. So that's the transparency you're linked to see.
Yeah, I mean, just one slight wee thing I noticed in Collum's language there. He said, I believe we got that wrong. And that's wrong itself. We got that wrong. Just say it. Don't say what you believe.
Nitpicking.
No, it's important that he's authoritative on it. We got that wrong.
Is that his opinion or is that the full board's opinion?
Exactly.
You're spot on.
Is it IFAB or whatever? Just say it, And just because that lets the referees under, exactly where they stand as well. So, but yeah, to come out and even say it is, that is, it's ridiculous in 2024. That is a massive leap for the SFA to come out and put their paws up and say we got that wrong.
I think overall it's a healthy thing, and it's the first of what I think is going to be a monthly show. So we'll sit tight for October's fiasco and we'll see who comes there. But I think overall it's a good thing, and what Willie Collum and others are saying is we're not going to nail this right away, but over time it should improve.
The media have got a part to play as well. So in the next one we'll see the 2 penalties from Saturday's, the one that Hearts didn't get, the one that we did get. Mm-hmm. But watching the show last week, you can tell why one is a penalty, one is another. Collum was very explicit in describing why one would be and one wouldn't be. But the media today are still coming out and saying, oh, you should have given both or none. It's like Collum is showing you that guy is right beside him, and he's showing you that guy is not, and his arms up defending. You know, it's clear. So the media have got to play their part as well. If the rules have changed and been applied differently, the media have got to take those rules and not be using the ones from last year. Classic
clickbait though. That makes for a good story, and everyone clicks into it, and they win, and all the advertisers win. So that's just the way that world works. But I think the VAR was used well at the weekend for the Celtic and Hearts penalties that were and weren't given. So I think that's a sign of promise in terms of how it's all going, and we'll see what October's show brings. As I mentioned there, that's available now on the SFA's YouTube channel. Inside the Huddle, so we've seen the kind of teaser clips over the last few weeks, but it was released finally on Friday, I think it was. Some great clips doing the rounds already. Brendan Rodgers and Callum McGregor take centre stage as you'd kind of expect, but lots of footage from inside the change room, team meetings, cup finals, player of the year awards and all that kind of stuff. And you've seen it in Huddle, haven't you? I've not quite finished it. You've not started it?
Not started, I've just seen clips.
So let's hear from you. What do you think of it?
I mean, it's great. I mean, it was a really tough season. You know, there was so much going on. That first transfer window, that second transfer window, and just to get the journey of that, and also you get a bit more of the personality of players. Greg Taylor comes out fantastically well. Just a great guy to have on the team bus, as does Tony Ralston, Louis Palmer.
What a singer.
By the way.
Likes that chant.
Not bad. The one thing, so you used to get these kind of reviews of the season by Scott Sport or Sports Scene kind of thing in years past. And one thing I would say they missed out slightly on, and it's a very minor criticism, but they were showing a game and Celtic were 5 points ahead in the league, and then nothing happened, and then Celtic were 8 points behind in the league, and you're going, you need to show me what happened there, because that's what created the drama. That was the big thing.
Take me through the storytelling arc. We're up, we're down, but we finished on the up.
So shows, I would even be showing, you know, Rangers scoring at whatever game they were at and winning to get 3 points, 6 points, 8 points ahead of us, whatever it may be. So you just get that full feeling of being on the roller coaster.
The defeats, the Hearts game, and you come on, aye.
I would have just shown extended highlights of Rangers v Ross County followed by Rangers v Dundee, and see that as the moment where it all went pear-shaped for them. But I'd have watched that just as happily.
That, you know?
Yeah, I think your points will be noted, I'm sure, by the multimedia
Don't show
team.
them, but aye, show us failing.
Paddy, some good interviews with guys like Joe Hart, obviously moved on now, Carter Vickers still here, Matt O'Reilly moved on, but lots of good stuff from them, and it gives you a really decent insight into the season, and you've yet to watch it, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But is it the kind of thing you like to see, you know, that in the inner sanctum and the last words before players take to the park? Are you into that?
I do and I don't.
What do you don't?
They know a camera's on them.
Yeah, that's all a bit staged.
I'm maybe being a bit cynical, but when I watch like inside, obviously you see the likes of the Man City one, you see the Arsenal one, I'm like, oh man, it just looks like,
I love it all.
I know the camera's on me. I think it's great. It's all about me. Go in there and make it about me.
Mikel Arteta goes a bit David Brent in some of his things, doesn't he?
Aye. So does Pep though. Pep's got that in him as well.
I think with Pep it's more natural. I think Arteta's learned it from Pep, but forget him. It's all a bit BR. He's the man now.
Rodge.
And he's everything you kind of think he's going to be in it. You know, he's impressive in so many ways.
I will watch it, of course.
I'm sure you will. If you do want to watch it, Paddy, it's available now on Celtic TV. It's free if you've got a subscription, or you can also buy it on demand for $4.99, or it may also be available for free elsewhere.
Do try and pay for it, man. Did you pay for it, James? It's on the Celtic TV account, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the account?
The shared account.
That sounds like a shared number, eh?
He's got me there.
He's got me there.
Okay, just as we start to wrap things up, Paddy, your final thoughts ahead of a massive week in Europe and in the League Cup for Celtic?
My final thoughts is I want a login.
I'll hook you up after the show.
Or a fiver.
Aye. Really, really excited for this week. And as I said earlier on, 2 weeks tomorrow, Borussia Dortmund as well. I think we're really, really just gathering this momentum at the moment. A very, very good start to the season from Celtic. I think we can all agree on that. Everything's kind of going to come to a full test then on Wednesday night to see, you know, what kind of team are we working with away from the Scottish Premier League. What are we going to bring to Europe? What are we bringing to the table? And I think I've got a high optimism about it. I really do. Lay a marker on Wednesday. Give ourselves a fighting chance to get into this game on the 1st of October. I'm not saying we're going to go and win it, but we can go and lay a glove, I think.
I think so too. I was going to keep back for the pre-match show for the Slovan game. I read today that in 12 Champions League campaigns, Celtic have never won their opening game. And I'll need to double check it because I thought surely Martin Wheeler somebody won it, but I believe not.
Wow.
So this is a chance to set another record. It was Liam Scales was actually quoted. He said, we called the record at the weekend. We've got a chance to go and break another record, get into this midweek. But lots to look forward to, James. But this one's the acid test, isn't it? You know, a lot of talk, made signings, done this, done that, playing well. You've got to go and take those steps in Europe that have been missing in previous years.
Absolutely. 40 plus years of watching Celtic in Europe and all of that entails, and yet here I am, super optimistic.
Yeah.
It's been built this way, and Rodgers is fully in charge. We've got a successful transfer window. We've got a really strong squad now, and that's a massive thing. And I think we'll add to it in January as well. But all of the prep work that Celtic often don't do or they make a mess of has been done. It's ready. They've hit the ground running. Season's off to a flyer. Not lost a goal. I mean, if they can just keeping that going in all competitions has got to be a target as well. Obviously, League Cup's gone, but keeping it going in Europe as well. Dortmund away, no goals.
Clean sheet in Dortmund.
See.
One step at a time. Let's deal with Slovan. Big week ahead. Slovan on Wednesday, and then it's Falkirk in the League Cup quarter final on Sunday. So that wraps things up on the latest Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James and Paddy, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back this week with pre and post match shows for our Champions League game against Slovan Bratislava and for that League Cup quarter final with Falkirk. And remember to check out the CelticExchange.supercast.com to help us bring you even more Celtic this season. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.